Hello and welcome to the Scanlon Leadership Interview Series, sponsored by the Scanlon Leadership Network and Foundation. I'm your host, Ron Duffy. In these interviews, you'll meet successful business leaders and entrepreneurs who talk about what it takes to become a great leader and share their experiences building effective organizations with a Scanlon plan. A Scanlon plan is an innovative leadership process for total organization development. It consists of a set of assumptions about human motivation and behavior, general principles for management based on these assumptions, and specific procedures for implementing these principles. The Scanlon Leadership Network is a nonprofit association of high-performance, values-led organizations founded by Joe Scanlon and Dr. Carl Frost. Joe Scanlon was a steelworker and MIT lecturer who in the 1950s pioneered some of the first high-performance work systems based on the revolutionary idea that the average employee wants to work and has great creativity if given the opportunity. Dr. Frost carried on Scanlon's work at Michigan State University, conducting research and installing Scanlon plans. Member organizations have won the Baldrige Award, the Shingo Prize, hundreds of supplier awards, and 5 have been ranked in the top 50 best places to work in North America. The Scanlon Leadership Network is considered one of the best-kept secrets in American business. The Scanlon Leadership Network and Foundation brings this series of interviews to you as a public service to help leaders create better organizations for workers, consumers, and investors. Scanlon, where the best ideas come together. Our guest today is Buzz Kersman, retired owner and CEO of Lorin Industries. From 1964 through 1982, Buzz owned and operated 2 manufacturing businesses, Kersman Anodizing, a service metal finisher of auto parts, and Kersco Fabricating, makers of aluminum trim parts for the auto and appliance industries. In 1983, Buzz Kersman bought Lorin Industries from his father and operated this business until he retired in 2006, selling the business to his son. Lorin Industries is a world leader in the manufacture of continuous coil anodizing of aluminum. This automated process puts a decorative and protective coating on sheet aluminum used in building materials for windows, doors, and wall panels. When Buzz took over Lorin Industries in 1984, the business had $10 million in sales and no international customers. By 2006, Lorin Industries had grown to $45 million in sales, with 25% of the sales coming from international customers. Lorin now employs 80 people and ships 30 million pounds of aluminum worldwide. Buzz Kersman is a lifelong resident of Muskegon, Michigan. He earned a B.A. in economics from the College of William and Mary. Buzz served as a first lieutenant in the United States Army from 1962 through 1964. He has served as chairman of the board for many service organizations in the Muskegon area. Buzz has been married for 44 years with 4 married children and 9 grandchildren. In this interview, I ask Buzz Kersman to share his experience and insights on implementing Scanlon plans at Kersco Fabricating and Lorin Industries. Most of the discussion focuses on the Scanlon plan implemented at Lorin Industries. And now, let's begin the interview. Buzz Kersman, I'd like to welcome you to the Scanlon Leadership Interview Series.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm very interested.
Buzz, to start us off, would you briefly tell us about Lorin Industries?
Lorin Industries was founded by my father. It's a family-owned business. We've been in existence for 65 years. Currently have a few under 100 employees producing 45 million in sales annually. And our process is continuous coil anodizing, which is a finish for aluminum used in making a variety of building products.
Give me one example of what a product might be from this anodized aluminum coil.
We get the aluminum from aluminum producers like Alcoa. Our automated machinery puts a finish on it called anodizing, and one of the products that would be a sandwich panel for commercial buildings, office buildings or malls.
Thank you, Buzz. Buzz, would you tell us how it came to be that you started and implemented a Scanlon plan at Lorin Industries?
Back in the early 80s, I was running a division of Lorin that actually fabricated decorative trim for appliance and auto manufacturers that are in the West Michigan area here. We were growing very fast. We developed problems in the relationship between the management and employees, and a union came about. When that did, I changed the plant manager. The person that was there was a command and control type, and got a more relaxed person. And after a success of a couple years, he came to me and said, we need something more to reward these people that they've cooperated. Can we do something outside our union contract? Both the manager and I then started a quest to find what would be an appropriate way to reward the people. I being very cautious about just a unilateral payment, a bonus. How could we have a system where the people would understand how they were earning this bonus?
So you're talking about the Scanlon plan that you implemented at Kersman Company?
That's correct.
Okay, and so that was your first experience with the Scanlon plan, and now for purposes of the amount of time we have, we're going to focus mostly on the Scanlon plan that you instituted at Lorin Coil Anodizers, which is another one of the companies under Lorin Industries, correct?
Yes.
I'd like to have you take us through how you started a Scanlon plan at Lorin Coil Anodizers, and particularly what I'm looking for is you ran into some resistance almost from the beginning. You told me a story about this. You had an employee who had come out of the academic or education world and was now working in the manufacturing plant. Very articulate person, and I think you described him almost like a lawyerly type person. The attitude was, why are we doing this? Are you trying to pull something over on us? Can you kind of pick that up and talk about that and how you handled that or how you got it started?
Yes, but backing up a little bit, we'd had 3 years of success in the Kersco division. Kersco was probably 1/4 the size of the coil anodizers division, and successful, but never as successful as coil anodizers. So there was a little jealousy there. Why should we, with all of our success, look at a plan that is over in another division? So there was some suspicion about that, and I realized that. In actuality, coil anodizers was growing at probably an average of 15% a year, very profitable. And so what was the need to change?
Buzz, before you continue on, this may be an important point. Sometimes I think people might have it in their mind that, well, you're only doing a Scanlon plan if you got trouble at your company, corporation, manufacturing plant, whichever business you're in, and that Scanlon can be a way to salvage a tough situation and make you improve your performance and so on. But what I'm hearing from, that may be a case for some companies, but what I'm hearing from you is your company was doing real well. You're coming at Scanlon from a point of, we're doing well right now, and what value does Scanlon bring to a situation like that?
Correct, and in both divisions we were profitable. It was more of what is the proper way to go forward here. And at Kersco, it was a reward for good performance At Lorin, the management, myself, could see we were growing fast. We needed better communications. We needed for ourselves time to spend on new products and new markets. We were going offshore, developing international business. We needed something, a process that would keep the company going while we were turning our attention elsewhere.
All right, thank you. Now, with that background, I'd ask you to share a little bit about these employees that were saying, what's the deal here? We're already more successful than Kersco, so why do you want us doing a Scanlon plan?
Okay, I guess they felt that they had some ownership in this new direction. There's a gain-sharing association in Texas, and this one man, John, I won't give his last name, and several others that the company, the employees picked, spent a week-long time down in Texas looking at a variety of gain-sharing programs, came back to Michigan, and then visited a variety of companies, and then presented to me that they agreed that it should be a Scanlon plan that we look at for the future of coil anodizers.
The beauty of that, as we were preparing for this interview and you were telling me this story, what I thought was very interesting was you took their energy of, hey, what's this about? Do we really need to do this? And you kind of put it in their hands and said, research this, come back and tell me what you've learned. And they did that. And they come back and say, we think Scanlon's the best opportunity for us.
It was a gamble on my part because I really was enjoying the process at Kersco, and we were getting good benefits, and it would have been the easiest for me to have a Scanlon plan, but if the employees weren't going to back it at coil anodizers, it would be a fight from the word go.
That's almost the antithesis of what Scanlon's about. Tell me if I'm misunderstanding something, but Scanlon really is, in some ways, it's a process to take the fight out of the relationship between management and the working force, or the ownership, management, and the working force.
Exactly. In the development of the plan, and this is the uniqueness of Scanlon, is there is no textbook. You use one of the consultants, as we did, and over a period of 6 months, and ours was 7 months, could be as long as a year, you develop the plan with management and employees working on a variety of teams. We had 3 teams. We had a communications team, we had a rules and regulations team, we had an equity team, and there was about 6 people on each of those. The employees selected their own representatives for those teams, and so by the time you put together the plan, it really is unique to your company, and no 2 Scanlon plans that exist today are that much alike, other than we try to have the same principles of identity, participation, equity, and education together.
One of the things we did to prepare for this interview is you sent me the actual written plan that was used at Lorin Coil Anodizers, and it was called the CTA plan, Coil Teamwork in Action, and I did review it. And as you just said, as in the planning part of implementing the Scanlon plan at Lorin Coil Anodizers, you had these 3 committees: education and communication, and they developed what's the identity section. It dealt with the history, the current situation, the need to change, why Scanlon. The Rules and Regulations Committee developed things like you were going to have departmental teams, monthly meetings, you discuss performance and problems. You'd have caucus committees that would handle problems that cut across different departments, which is very common in all walks of life. A screening committee made up of management, the CEO, and various member of each of the teams, and a suggestion system. And then the equity group defined equity for the customer, the owner, the employee, and actually had the tough and important challenge of, well, what kind of formula are we going to come up with if indeed we have a bonus? Key issues were identified that would need to be addressed. So that's what all happened in like those first 7 months. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Here's the point I want to make about it. I'm reading this thing and I'm saying to you, Buzz, I said, Buzz, this document is really well written, well done. I read the mandate for change, very clear. I'm just so impressed. And I said to you, well, if all your employees read this, you're going to have a very educated workforce. What was your response to me?
Well, my response was that probably most people have not or never will read it.
That surprised me because I knew from talking to other Scanlon business leaders that one of the common traits of Scanlon companies is they have a very intelligent, educated workforce about their business and what it takes to be successful. And so that presented a little bit of a dilemma to me, and you solved it for me by saying what really is important.
Well, what really is important is trust in this process. When we finally got the document put together, we had a vote, and 97% of our employees, virtually 97 out of 100, said, yes, we want to go forward. You are, in that 7 months, developing rapport, developing a respect for both sides that brings together the trust that's necessary to go forward. And the document is best served when it just collects dust and people can get together in a caucus or on their team and say, yes, we're going to do this, and it may not be necessarily according to our rules, but it's in the best interest of everybody involved.
There are a few people in the company who read the documents so they know how to get things started, but the real magic of any Scanlon plan is the actual doing of the plan, as you are saying, meeting in the teams, addressing issues, having a system, a suggestion system for coming up with solutions. That's really where the education and the becoming highly business literate process happens.
Exactly.
Okay, let's see. That 7 months of the planning, you've said to me previously, it's give and take. A year-long process builds trust and camaraderie. I'm reminded, I've read this in business literature, this phrase that says, how important is it to plan? Your comment to me was there's a lot of business leaders who, just in their nature, it's like type A personality. Let's do something. Give me a plan and let's go. And Scanlon's a little bit not like that.
That's true. It's not as clear, black and white, that as a leader you have to take a longer time to educate people, to give them a chance to absorb and understand, and as much as possible drive decision-making down, because it's our belief that the person that's doing the job has the most knowledge and that it's our job to facilitate and give them the tools, let them make the decision.
All right, thank you. Buzz, I'll ask you if you want to make any comment about the key Scanlon principles, which is the bedrock of any Scanlon plan, even though it turns out to be implemented very uniquely. Those principles are identity, participation, competence, and equity. Do you have any comments you'd like to make about each principle?
Well, in short, identity should bring you to a focus. Everybody on the same page. That's the first principle, and you need to spend enough time there so that in everybody's own language they understand where is the company going and what does that mean to me. Participation, to me in particular, means that you build a trust and respect. And so it isn't we, they, and the people working in the plant feel it, that they don't feel they're a lesser person because they don't have a college education or they don't have management skills. it truly is the management's respect for their ability to do their job, and we're going to try to make it better for everybody. And that, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit beyond equity to talk about competence, that this becomes very, very big. You don't look at training dollars as a necessary evil, that even in bad times you might double the amount that you spend there, understanding that to get out of troubled times you need to make people more competent. And then, of course, from the beginning, equity, which we use the triangle and put at the pinnacle the customer, it always has to be understand that they're first, and that the shareholders, owners, and the employees are there to serve the customer. You just constantly have to review that, and that's a part, of course, the focus is it's got to be there to be a success for the company.
In our conversations, you told me that Bill Greenwood was the consultant you used to implement the Scanlon plan at Lorin. Is there anything you'd like to say about the early steps of the process where you were developing the mandate for the company, the compelling need to change?
Well, first of all, I think most of the consultants for Scanlon, you sense their passion for it. I trusted Bill implicitly, and it was all Greek to me in the beginning, so I was learning as we went along. And using a number of different consultants, I would say Bill was one of the best, and it wouldn't have been any different if I would have had Carl Frost or some of the others, because of this passion that they all have for this process. He was very demanding. It was good for the company to go through this exercise. As far as the mandate is concerned, it's one of the first statements we make in the document, the coil teamwork and action plan that we have. It is a couple things that seem to be very important to everybody. For the whole company as a whole is, what are we? And we are coil anodizing, and we want to focus on that. The second paragraph in that statement says that as the owner, what's very important to me is the long-term existence of the company, and everything that we consider along the way, we're going to be very conservative financially. We don't want to get ourselves into a debt situation. And thirdly, for the employees, it was harmony and trust. They, through this process, felt that to go forward, we needed a lot more understanding between the two groups, and it shouldn't be management just telling the employee what to do. They've always had a large respect for their own ability. This is a complicated process, a lot of chemistry and machinery, and that management need to better understand and respect that and release them to do their job.
You're listening to the Scanlon Leadership Interview Series. I'm Ron Duffy, and we are talking with Buzz Kersman, retired owner and CEO of Lorin Industries, a world leader in the manufacture of continuous coil anodizing of aluminum. This automated process puts a decorative and protective coating on sheet aluminum used in building materials for windows, doors, and wall panels. In this interview, I asked Buzz Kersman to share his experience and insights on implementing Scanlon plans at Kersco Fabricating and Lorin Industries. All right, thank you, Buzz. I'm going to ask us to jump into some stories that you've told regarding different aspects of a Scanlon plan at work. You were telling me a little bit about what it was like for you working with people on the identity committee at both Kersco and then at Lorin Coil Anodizers. And some of the things you said to me, I'm going to say these things, and if that elicits more of a response from you, please pick it up. You said things like this. These are quotes from you. I worked with volunteers I never would have picked. I was challenged at times as to why things are the way they are. I began to realize questioning is valuable to make things clear. The employees were asking me for accountability so they can understand the business, so they can do their jobs better.
Yes, I suppose going into the process as the owner and the leader of the company, I saw it as more one-sided, that this was going to be an education process for the employees only. But it was as much, if not more, an education process for me and the leaders as we were challenged and had to validate some of the things that we felt were just law, that it was rightful to question, and I'm sure some of the things we changed because it didn't sound right to us either, even though we'd been operating under certain assumptions for many years.
Let's jump into a story you told me. We call it the floppy disk story. And this is part of the Scanlon process at Lorin Coil Anodizers. You know, we don't have time in the interview to detail all the different steps that are involved, but I'll try to summarize some of the things. Each department had teams that met on a regular schedule. Did they meet monthly or was it weekly?
I think they had to meet monthly, or some, when they had issues, would meet more often.
Okay. So there's teams that are meeting. There's a very developed suggestion system about how do you submit a suggestion, where does it go, and my sense as I read the plan was that there was accountability built into this as to what happens to a suggestion, so it doesn't get lost into the void and outer space and someone goes, well, what did you do with my suggestion, and I don't feel good because it wasn't addressed. These suggestions were followed up. So with that background, tell us about what happened with this back in the day before we have CDs now, computers. You would save information on floppy disks. So that's what we're talking about. And tell me about that story at Lorin and how that became a product and how Scanlon affected all this.
Typically, we had monthly meetings and representatives from each of the 12 teams that we had. And the teams were usually by particular departments, if it was the maintenance department, sales department, accounting department, and so on. We had one man there who was from our engineering department, who was a machine engineer, no product or marketing experience at all. When we were looking for new products, he suggested that from his own use of floppy disks, would it be possible to convert the little metal door from stainless steel to aluminum?
And Buzz, before you continue on, I just want to, for our listeners, the committee that you're talking about now is the screening committee.
Yes.
Which is the committee the CEO, the managers, and representatives from each of the teams sit on.
Right.
Okay, then go on, please.
Okay. So he went back from this meeting where we had asked each of the teams to consider possibilities for new products and wrote up a suggestion and submitted the suggestion. We went forward with it. What makes it unique is that our company, like any company without Scanlon, would probably be fairly independent departments, and the new product development department wouldn't necessarily be interested in somebody outside of their discipline giving this suggestion, but they readily accepted it, and it moved on to be 30% of our business, increase our business from $40 million to $60 million a year. We captured a large global portion of that marketplace.
The key lesson or moral of the story is, I'm going to try to say it, and I'll ask you to correct me if I don't say it right or add to it if you want to say more, but this idea that, hey, can we use aluminum to make that little metal piece on floppy disks instead of steel? came from a plant engineer who was in a department that didn't have anything to do with considering new products, yet he felt the desire, he felt the request from the screening committee that, hey, we're looking, anybody got new ideas? And it's because of the Scanlon way of operating, where you had teams meeting, you had cross-functional teams, you had Scanlon. I think you've said to me over and over again, Buzz, Scanlon really became a very important way to have a good communication process in your company.
Yes.
And so this idea comes from a place that if you weren't operating in a Scanlon way, may not have shown up.
That's exactly it.
And the traditional way of operating in many companies, I think we were calling it the silo effect, or that was your words for it, Buzz. You want to say a little more about the silo effect?
Well, only that each department becomes very protective of their domain and isn't always interested in somebody else's comment because they don't consider them trained in what they're dealing with. This company in particular, we have $10 million machines that are totally automated from one end to the other, and it's a chemical process, so we have a number of PhDs that are working on problem solving. There's a lot of skill here. It was the process helped not to break it down, but develop respect for one another so that ideas could move from one area of the business to the other.
Speaking of these very expensive machines, did the Scanlon process facilitate allowing decision-making to go down to the employees who actually ran these machines, that they had a big say in whether you bought a new machine or what kind of machine was updated and so on?
We always, when we would buy a new machine, include on the team that would go visit the manufacturer or a plant that already had a machine that we were going to install, the operators of that particular machine or other volunteers were welcome to go along, so that when we inked the decision and if we bought a new slitter that was $4 million worth, it wouldn't be just the engineer that would do that, and he was always willing to have these people along, knowing that it would lessen his problems in the installation or operation phases because there was some ownership there by the operator. They'd had a voice in the selection.
Well, thank you for that insight. To finish up the floppy disk story, you had an idea that the seed of an idea came from an unexpected source, and then you ran it through your process of involving the right departments and resource people, and the idea became successful, amounted to about $20 million in sales per year, and that went on for about 5 years or so. And I think you told me, Buzz, that you had captured about 90% of the market.
We had forecast that there might be a conversion from stainless steel to aluminum of 60% of all of the floppy disks. It actually happened to be 90%. We thought that we could capture 60% of the market, and we got 90% of 90%.
And it may not have happened without Scanlon and the suggestion system and the communication systems that were put in place. In one sense, that's a heck of a return on an investment in Scanlon.
Very much so.
Now, the other side of the coin, I think it's important to talk about, too. So we've just given a story about the value and importance of having a suggestion system and a communications system and an operating system where you use teams to come up with ideas, and wow, sometimes very breakthrough ideas can happen, and so that's what really it's all about. But the other side of the coin is this doesn't come for free, and what I want to have you talk a little bit about is, you mentioned to me, this is a rough quote from you, the suggestion system was a continual struggle. Would you talk about that side of it?
Well, of course, we didn't mention it, but it was a part of our bonus system, so the more success we had there, the more potential for bonus. It was a part of the overall bonus system. So we got inundated with suggestions, and they had to be routed to the right area. If it was machine change, and it would take sometimes the engineers quite a while to look at it, and we rated the suggestion by the turnaround time. So actually created some anger at time by the employees, because why can't you get this through? It's simple to us. Well, they didn't know enough about the fact it had to be designed, engineered, or outsourced. It was always a constant battle to keep up with all of that.
It's not all gravy. There's some work behind the gravy, but you do it because the potential rewards are absolutely dramatic.
Correct. The whole system is a lot of communications, reports required by each department for the screening meeting every month, more accountability. We're keeping a scorecard on what people are doing, and some people naturally resist it. Others have a problem with, you're making too many demands on me. That Scanlon is nice, but I've got customers to satisfy, I've got problems to resolve, and they're taking 110% of my time, and you're asking me to add the burden of all this communications, necessary or not.
And so how do you resolve that? In your own mind, how did you resolve that and say this is worth it?
Well, then it's an opportunity that maybe we hadn't really understood, that we had a bottleneck in the organization. So it meant that maybe we had to review the requirements of that department and shift some of those to somebody else or hire another person. So, we might have just gone on and had the problem, but because there was enough trust and respect, people felt like it wasn't going to fall on deaf ears. They could speak up.
Let's see if I'm following this. One of the issues that sometimes is brought up by employees with regard to a Scanlon plan is this attitude. You're creating all this extra work for me. You want me to be in these meetings with teams. You want these communications and these reports. I'm up to my eyeballs in alligators right now trying to solve problems and put out fires, just doing my quote-unquote job. That's a perspective, correct, Buzz?
Yes.
Okay, and the response to that about why we do Scanlon and why, yes, we do expect you to be in these teams and do these ways that we communicate with each other and that this is important, it's going to be the way we do business, is if we do this process of communication, meeting in teams and having ways to talk with each other, we will actually reduce the inefficiencies that created the reason you're up to your eyeballs in alligators right now.
Yes, but quite honestly, we couldn't always do that either, There were situations that were not easily resolvable, and people wanted more instantaneous results that we couldn't always take care of.
Okay. And so you just learned to live with that.
Yeah. We had to be honest about it, and rather than just walk away, explain it the best we could.
Okay. Thank you for that understanding. You told me about a lost coil story. Would you share that with us? And relate it to the part of Scanlon you think it really highlights.
Well, we were having a quarterly meeting, which was all the employees, with the exception of a few to keep production running. So we would typically, if we had 90 employees, we'd have 80 there, and we always went to the local community college, usually in the morning for a breakfast. And other people would come in, and usually they would, that worked on the second and third shifts because they considered it very important. We announced that we were having difficulty reconciling the statement because we had some aluminum that we knew it was out there, but we'd spent 2 weeks and couldn't find it.
So it's an inventory...
An inventory glitch worth quite a bit of money, like $40,000. So I just suggested that whoever could find that material, I'd buy them a pizza. And within 2 hours, after we'd spent 2 weeks, we had our shipping man, who really is just on one end of the plant, found it in another part of the plant and reported it back in 2 hours.
It's a wonderful story. It brings a smile to my face and say that's the best investment in pizza that I've heard in a long time. What's the moral or the lesson of the story as it relates to Scanlon from your point of view, Buzz?
I think more of the involvement, less about the bonus and the pizza, that we're all in this together. I'm going to do it because I know it's important to the company. I feel a part of the company. I'm not just an employee. It's important to me to make a contribution where I can make a contribution.
Correct me if I'm not saying things you would say here, but having a Scanlon process allowed a way to communicate this need about lost inventory in a pretty efficient manner.
Yes.
And then the Scanlon process, because of the participation, the respect, and the trust that's built up using this kind of management and performance process, creates an atmosphere where people want to solve problems. So here was a problem, and it got solved pretty quickly.
Ron, here's one that we haven't talked about that comes to my mind. I did mention to you how important waste treatment operation was. In the course of one day, we have 500,000 gallons that we have to treat in our own wastewater treatment system. That would be equivalent to a waste treatment facility for a city of 5,000 people, that we had city, county, state, and federal laws that we had to comply with. We had one crackerjack guy that was sort of the overseer of this. We had 2 people on each shift that actually monitored. It was actually automatic, but they had to double-check things and make out reports. And this guy that was the overseer had a lot of great ideas, but he didn't like Scanlon. He was sort of a loner, and so he would just go ahead and implement these things or get with somebody in engineering and do it, and somebody else would write it up because it was important that we evaluate the dollars, and it was a part of the bonus system. At one of our quarterly meetings, several employees said it wasn't right, that he wasn't complying because he didn't write it up himself. They didn't feel it was right for the company just to move things forward, to have somebody else write up the suggestions and so on. Our answer to that was that everybody is different. Everybody contributes in a different way. Without that system, which is one of the heartbeats of our operation, we would be dead without it. And he is doing the right thing, and so we're going to find a way to work with him on this. And he wouldn't come to the meetings, never went to a team meeting, never came to a quarterly meeting, but he was doing the right job. It was a lesson, I thought, for the employees. You've got to understand that it's important that we recognize this, that even though he is a maverick, he is performing at a very high level.
Well, thank you for sharing that. One thing that comes to mind for me as you share that story, Buzz, it reminds me of what I think's a truism with the Scanlon plan, and my notes say that you've said this. I've heard other Scanlon stewards say the same thing, and that's if the CEO is not an advocate of a Scanlon plan, it will wither or die. And as I listened to you share this story about this maverick person who was a highly skilled employee with good ideas, I see that as CEO involvement. You're involved with this, and you've got some complaints from the workers on, hey, they're not doing it the right way, and we're mad about this. And you're involved, and you say, you said what you said. Sometimes people are mavericks, and we're going to find a way to work with them, and that's the way it's going to be. Does that make sense, or does that fit?
Yes, I think you and I also talked about the gray area. Things aren't black and white in this world, and that you have to make compromises, that you have to recognize that the ultimate goal for Lorin is survival. That means we've got to take care of our customers and make a profit, and that if you move back down the line, sometimes there are things you do, not illegal, but that you have to get outside of what you thought was the Constitution and do what's appropriate. I think the constant communications that you have and people better understanding what the focus is, why we're all at Lorin Industries, allows that to happen.
You're listening to the Scanlon Leadership Interview Series. I'm Ron Duffy, and we are talking with Buzz Kersman, retired owner and CEO of Lorin Industries, a world leader in the manufacture of continuous coil anodizing of aluminum. This automated process puts a decorative and protective coating on sheet aluminum used in building materials for windows, doors, and wall panels. In this interview, I asked Buzz Kersman to share his experience and insights on implementing Scanlon plans at Kersco Fabricating and Lorin Industries. There's another story that deals with the environmental aspects of metal finishing in wastewater. Let me give you a little preface to it. We were talking about accountability, wanting to be a good environmental steward. And you did mention already that your plant went through 500,000 gallons of water every day that had to be treated properly. It's comparable to a city of 5,000 people. You had to deal with a lot of federal, state, and city officials regarding environmental laws and regulations. And you commented to me that the employees probably had all kinds of chances to turn a valve a certain way that would get rid of some waste in a not appropriate way, and they didn't do it. They didn't do that kind of thing.
And that's correct. In the state of Michigan, if there's a major violation that could be judged as criminal, the CEO is held accountable. So I had sleepless nights, and I think the Scanlon process and the continual discussion about the importance of doing the right thing, people respected that. We operate 24 hours a day. That's our natural process, usually 5 days, but sometimes 7 days a week, depending on production needs. And I could walk away in the afternoon at 5 o'clock and know that I wasn't going to have an accident in the off shift, or somebody, because production wasn't going well, dump a solution that would cause an environmental problem.
You knew you could walk away because
of the proper understanding, education of the employees, and the bond that we had, the respect for the company and management. They felt that responsibility, accountability.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with us. You told me an interesting story that dealt with the profit and loss statement. And this goes back to, I guess, a difference in philosophy that you had with your father. Do you recall that story?
Yes, and Phil Kelly, who I talked to yesterday, who's been the treasurer here, the financial guy for almost 30 years at Lorin, without prompting, he recounted that when he came, he was told never to leave any financial data out on the desk. It was only key management that we reviewed the documents, and it was important that if he took a coffee break or went to lunch, that it all be locked up. He was saying that there was an incident where I was traveling, and we were on the phone, and he said, well, I think you ought to review this before I give it to the employees, and that my answer was, I'm not going to be back for a few days. It's important that they make the decision, give them the information. That we developed from the beginning the important idea with the employees that you can have anything you need. Walk in from the plant and take a file if you need it to make the best solution on an issue. And we only had one incident that we gave them the profit and loss statements. We're a privately held company. We're not required to give the information out to anybody. And one time in the parking lot was one of our monthly P&Ls, and the employees felt so bad about it that they instituted a few little rules for themselves rather than management having to say, well, we don't think you're capable of getting those reports anymore if we find one in the parking lot. So there is a high accountability and a respect that is developed both ways.
This high accountability and respect results from or develops out of this kind of statement of trust that's implicit when a CEO and management say, we're going to do this by, I guess the term might be called open book accounting or management. We're going to give you the profit and loss monthly statements so you can see how the company's doing, you can see how our cash flow is, because we feel the more educated you are as an employee with the necessary financial information, the better decisions you're going to make about how to run your department and so on. I think for a lot of companies, that's a hard hurdle to get over right there. And you shared with me that this was your philosophy. It's not a philosophy that your father had. People got to do it their own way, but this was your way. The story says you were rewarded. Maybe the worst thing you could think could happen happens. All of a sudden, your financials are sitting in somebody's parking lot, and you don't want that information out and about in the wrong people's hands. But you say it never happened again, and maybe the most important thing is the employees felt so bad about it that they came up with, I think part of it was people had to sign out when they had the information and then had to sign again when they returned it, so everyone knew who had the information and was responsible for it, and the incident didn't happen again. I agree that's a wonderful story of accountability and trust. And you said something else interesting to me about this, Buzz, and I said to you, gee, did it concern you that the financials might get into places it shouldn't be? And you said this to me, successful companies do not live or die on financial information.
Well, we have been the leader, and we were the leader when I took over the company in 1984, and it was based more on innovation and risk. And we've always continued that policy that we're watched by the competition, and if it works out for us, then they'll institute the product or the process, and they're not willing to gamble. But I've always found once you're there first, then you have to keep going, but you can maintain that leadership, and you're respected by the customers, so that generally, unless it's very, very cheap or there's an innovation by your competition, they'll stick with you.
Thank you. One of the policies that was implemented in your Scanlon plan was to have each department had a $400 a month allotment to spend on suggestions that came up in the suggestion system. There was kind of an interesting sidebar that happened with all that. Do you want to share that?
Yes. What we call a secondary department, after anodizing, they either cut the material into narrower coils on slitters or cut the length lines and so on, some fabrication work. They hadn't used that $400, and the whole idea was every month you had it, and you could use it any way you wanted to. Go to the hardware store, buy a few small tools, things to improve production without any management's approval. And they hadn't done that, but they had every month for a long time continued to improve their production and efficiency and quality. And so they felt good about themselves and went out and bought like a bowling jacket with the company name emblazoned on the back and their name on their department on the front. And the whole organization got into an uproar that it was a misuse of that money. And that came out at one of these quarterly meetings. The answer to it was, by myself and others in management, is, well, it likely is stretching the idea of the use of that money. I think punishment enough is that they've got the whole rest of the organization coming down on them, and we're not going to rewrite the policy, but that we're just going to use a little better judgment in the future.
One of the things you said to me at that time is you referred to getting out of the box. If you do the same old, you're going to be out of business.
Correct. And this maybe is a misinterpretation of getting out of the box, but maybe others now will think about different ideas rather than buying some simple tools at the hardware store.
The things I pick up listening to you tell that story, one, again, is I see CEO involvement in advocating for here's a quirk, here's another gray area. Was the money used exactly as it was intended? No. Do I have a high-functioning department that's doing well? I do. Do I think they need to be punished? Not any more than the problems they've had with other employees about this. And you settled the issue. And I've heard you again and again tell me at different times that one of the things you developed at your company when issues came up is you discussed it, came to a conclusion. There wasn't the bitterness and resentment that lingered. Is that accurate?
That's very accurate, and it's due to the fact that the Scanlon process with meetings and a lot of communications, some of it received, some of it in one ear and out the other, but it's there. It creates a better understanding, trust and respect. And then as you go through the course and years go by and you have these situations that you do resolve, they build on each other. The bond gets stronger based on the fact that you have resolution. Not always that people are happy about, but they've had their day in court, we've discussed it, and we move on.
That's a priceless gift to a company that wants to be high-functioning. It's actually a priceless gift to a family. In any kind of sociological setting, whether it's your business or your family, having that ability to deal with something, accept it, continue the trust, and move on leads to successful living.
Well, it's very interesting you bring up the word family, because the company always was a very strong family in a different way. My father and the other four key people who had been together and all retired together after 30 years were very paternalistic. For instance, if one employee was going to lose his home, my dad would march down to the courthouse and negotiate with him and give him enough money to buy him off, and then if he never got the money back from the employee, it was just the way it was. We changed all that with Scanlon in that now there has to be more individual accountability. So if an individual got into trouble with not paying for their home or keeping up with their credit cards, the new answer was, we'll find a credit consultant outside the company and help you work with them so that you can find a solution for yourself. Scanlon is more of recognizing the individual and trying to increase the individual competence rather than the old way that we had was, we are the leaders, we're going to take care of you, you're our family.
Well, thank you for that. Another story you shared with me that I think speaks to this topic of we dealt with issues and we moved on. And this is the story of how your company dealt with budding or potential issues that were in the topic area of sexual discrimination or intimidation. You had a woman salesperson. Your company, as you shared with me, Buzz, and again, jump in if I'm not saying things accurately, your company was mostly employed men in the plant. You had a woman salesperson who would go to the plant on business on occasion, and she was complaining about how she was treated, saying there was some lewd looks and so on. And so, as per Scanlon, a team was formed to look into the issue. Do you want to pick it up from there?
Yes, I was invited in after the team was formed. This gal made it clear that we had a very serious problem that she wanted resolved. We had one woman chemist out in the plant, and without being irate or raising her voice, she said, well, there is a simple solution to this problem, and that is you should be wearing work shoes instead of high heels out in the plant, and that you might consider, if you're going to be in the plant a lot, for your own safety, as well as the comments of the men out there, wearing slacks instead of a skirt. And the issue just went away.
Your statement to me as we talked about this is, you said, we came to much quicker solutions for problems. We could solve things readily with a team getting together and talking openly. Wow.
Yeah, because the teams were never mandated. We first invited people, anybody that wanted to come. It never got to be 10 or 15 people. Many times we could only get one or two, and we didn't feel that was right either, that we needed 4 or 5 people. And in the case of the sexual discrimination team, we invited sort of a redneck guy from the maintenance department that would be a likely one to make the cat calls or whatever, to be a part of this thing so that he could see the other side of it.
Taking a risk of putting people together that might create a volatile mixture, I think, is a tribute to the Scanlon process.
I think it is, but quite honestly, when people get involved and they understand the other side, see things firsthand, you almost know the result is going to be different than you think it would be.
In a good way.
In a positive way. I guess, in a way, a trust to human nature, but human nature generally is pretty positive in my view.
Buzz, I'm going to say a couple other quotes that fit here, and then I'll ask if you have any additional comment. Here's a couple of quotes from you. We followed team meeting schedules religiously. When people come in contact with each other enough, you start to understand each other. It creates trust and a positive environment. And another quote, you said this to me as you were sharing this sexual discrimination team story with me. You said this: there are many good things about implementing a Scanlon plan that have nothing to do with the bonus. Any comment from you?
Yes, we got into the true value. Every business has its ups and downs, and my feeling was that we had better success in the times when sales were off or we were losing money, that people understood and were willing to put their shoulder to the wheel and get us back on track. The Scanlon plan is invaluable for those times, and every business has it.
This quote from you, I think, fits here as well. This is a quote from you, Buzz. It's been said that Scanlon has greater value in times of stress rather than good times.
Yes, because people do band together. The education that has been ongoing, they're better prepared to find a solution, and they know that that's the Scanlon way, is to try to find a solution.
Buzz, at Lorin, the Scanlon plan really was separate from anything to do with profit-sharing plans and determining wages. Is that typical of Scanlon plans, or do you have any comment about that?
It is typical of Scanlon plans, and at Lorin in particular, there was a concern by the employees that we had a successful profit-sharing plan, that this might be a scheme on management or my part to get rid of that and replace it with a bonus system that would have a lot of baggage attached to it. They would have a new set of rules that they weren't sure about. There was a lot of talk until we developed our Scanlon plan and the ad hoc process over those 7 months, where they could now see nothing that was already instituted at Lorin was going to be tampered with.
Thank you. I'm going to move us on to probably the last thing we'll talk about here, and this is just picking up on some quotes you've said to me that express your views on leadership and the Scanlon process. And I'll say these quotes to you, Buzz, and just ask you for any additional comment. Here's one of them. This is you talking now, Buzz. Scanlon is like an insurance policy, not leaving things to chance.
Yes, and there with the process and keeping up with the process, it was, for me, comforting to know as we were developing the business and I had to spend a lot of time on new products or traveling abroad, that the company would go on and there wouldn't be any gaps.
Here's a last one. These are kind of 2 or 3 quotes just all put together. This is about your seeing Scanlon as a humanistic business philosophy. And you said to me, Buzz, people involved with Scanlon share a belief in the potential of human beings. It's not to clamp down on them. There's a lot more. If you practice trust and respect, you get so much more. Plus, it's fun.
That's right. You really have to be a person that wants the involvement, doesn't mind being challenged, so therefore you have to have confidence that the right solution will come up and that it may not be yours.
And you have to be not only okay with that, but you almost have to look forward to that.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you. Any comments about the benefits of Scanlon and the challenges of Scanlon?
The challenge is always that you've got a lot of people involved, so you have a lot of reports, you have a lot of meetings. You have to be understanding and tolerant of that way of operating.
If you were to say the key benefit, if a CEO or key personnel of a company has been listening to this interview and they're considering whether to start the process of implementing a Scanlon plan, and you're in front of them, and they're saying to you, Buzz, bottom line, what's the key reason to do this? How would you respond?
The power of the total involvement of an organization and what it can lead to in growth and the benefits to the company and everybody.
Well, Buzz, thank you so much for being with us for the Scanlon Leadership Interview Series.
I've enjoyed it, and I hope it's a contribution for somebody else.
You've been listening to one of the Scanlon Leadership Network interview series. I'd like to thank our guest, Buzz Kersman, for being with us. This interview series about leadership and Scanlon business principles is brought to you by the Scanlon Leadership Network and Foundation, a nonprofit association of high-performance, values-led organizations. Scanlon, where the best ideas come together. For information on the services offered by the Scanlon Leadership Network, visit their website at www.scanlonleader.org. That's on the web at scanlonleader.org. Scanlon is spelled S-C-A-N-L-O-N. or call 517-332-8927. That's 517-332-8927. That's our interview for today. The great Scanlon leader, D.J. Dupree, taught us that every meeting with another human being should be what he called a fortuitous encounter. We are all children of God. We all have competencies and talents. The fact that we came together should make a difference. Here's wishing that all your encounters are indeed fortuitous. I'm Ron Duffy, and on behalf of the Scanlon Leadership Network, thanks for listening.